So I have before me two of my favorite laptops from Asus. Thin and light, powerful gaming laptops that are great for creators. The Asus Republic of Gamer Zephyrus G14 and the Asus Republic of Gamer Flow X13. Now, I must admit right off the bat, spoiler alert, this is my new favorite thin and light laptop from Asus by far. And I'll show you why as we get into the video. However, I still love the G14, and I actually want to talk about which G14 you should purchase moving into and through, well, moving now through the middle of and towards the end of 2023. Now, first and foremost, the biggest improvement for the X13, if you've seen any of my reviews, you already know, but we're going to point it out anyway, is bringing the large glass trackpad to the X13. An absolutely phenomenal move from Asus, which put this laptop neck and neck and even, in my opinion, above the G14. So now we have a thin and light laptop. It has great battery life. It is more compact than the G14. I'm going to go show you by putting it on top. And I love the form factor. It's the same dimension from the back of the chassis to the front. As you can see with the G14, it kind of lifts up as it heads towards the back of the chassis. And so it makes for a very thick, kind of chunky feel when you're on the go, where this much more resembles a nice thin and light Ultrabook, but packs an insane punch with the RTX 4070. Now with the G14, you can get a variety of SKUs. You can get an RTX 4050, 4060, 4070, and 4090. Now I've reviewed the 4060 and the 4090 version. For the X13, you can get Radeon graphics with just the Ryzen 9 7940 HS. Yes. Or you can get an RTX 4050 with that or an RTX 4070 with that. So there's a little bit fewer SKUs for the X13. And the price point, that's something that I'm not really stoked about for either of these laptops this year. They've gone up substantially in price, both the G14 and the X13. Now, if you want to know the best bang for buck out of these two laptops, I would get the 2022 version of the G14 with the RX 6700S or the RX 6800S. I know they're still online. I've still seen them. You can snag an amazing sale, or even if it's full price, it's going to be at a better price with better performance from last year's model. That model was just so optimized from 2022. And I even have full videos on my channel about that laptop. You can click or tap the screen at the end of this video, or go to my channel page if you want to know my thoughts about this year's 23 versus the 22 G14. But this is about the X13 versus the G14, so I'm literally going to stop there and not say anything else the rest of this video. I promise. I pinky swear. Okay, now let's get back into this. Now, from a connectivity standpoint, you can see that the G14 is slightly better connected. On the right side panel, we do have the ROG XG Mobile connector port. If I were you and I was considering getting the XG Mobile, I would get the integrated graphics version of the X13. I would not get one with the dedicated GPU. I would save the money, get the XG Mobile, and then you can plug it in wherever you go. Because when you're on battery power, when it comes to Windows laptops, you don't really even get the full performance of that dedicated GPU. So that means you have to be plugged into power for full performance of the X13. So with that in mind, you might as well save the money, get an X13 with only integrated graphics, and then when you get where you're going, plug in the dedicated GPU into battery power, because you have to do that anyway to get full performance out of the integrated dedicated GPU, if you got that. And you would have all that performance and more. So keep that in mind, because really battery life isn't going to change too much because it's the same processor, but you may find some money savings and even more performance out of the XG Mobile. Okay, little side note there. Now let's look at the ports. So in this XG Mobile, we do have a USB Type-C. We have a micro SD card reader, which is great for storage upgrade. We have an HDMI and then a headphone jack. Over here, we have our power adapter, HDMI, USB-C, and then headphone jack. Keep in mind that the X13 charges via USB-C, where the G14 has a dedicated power adapter. Now on the other side, we have two USB Type-A's for the G14, one USB Type-C, and a micro SD card reader. And on the other side for the X13, we have USB Type-A and a USB-C. So the thing that we're missing on the X13 is an additional USB Type-A, as well as not having to occupy your USB Type-C with your charger adapter, because the G14 has a dedicated power adapter plug. So just keep those few details in mind. Also, a nice little nudge for the 2023 model. They have it to where this stays connected. Before, it would you'd totally take it off, and I'm sure a lot of you lost that. I know I lost one, and I felt really bad because when I sent it back to Asus, it was missing. Okay, the next thing to take a look at, of course, is going to be the assembly. I think these are both assembled very well. You can see that the X13 fits in a little deeper, the bottom cover into the side panel compared to the G14. The G14 sits a little bit more flush where it assembles into bottom cover into side panel. But you see there's a little bit more of this, aluminum vent here where you have all magnesium alloy on the bottom. So this is magnesium alloy, aluminum. This is all magnesium alloy. Like I said, as you can see from this back vent, when it comes to the X13, it's just more of a thin and light, ultrabook aesthetic as compared to the more gamer design of the Zephyrus. So if you're a business owner or maybe you're a student and you want a more professional looking laptop, maybe even taken a little bit more seriously, then the X13 would definitely benefit you from a aesthetic standpoint. All right, let's go ahead and open and close the lid with one hand real quick. Opens and closes. No problem. You can see on the G14, we do have ergo lift. The chassis kind of lifts off of the desk a little bit as it goes up, where we do not have that on the X13. However, I don't think that's a huge deal. It's not a deal breaker for me, but some of you do like the ergo lift. It's a little bit more ventilation, especially if you're pushing your laptop really hard constantly. Now, keep in mind, the X13 is a 2-in-1 laptop, and you can get a pen with this laptop. It does not come with a pen. You'll have to get like the Asus Pen 2.0. That's the pen that I use for this laptop. You can see I'm throwing some B-roll on there. It has great touch sensitivity, good thick and thin lines, very responsive, and so that pen is excellent. I really like the Asus 2.0 pen, and it works very well on the X13 from 2023. Now, in regards to the webcams, here's a quick sample of each webcam so you can see what they look and sound like. This is the webcam on the Asus Republic of Gamer Flow X13 from 2023, and a little sample of the audio for you as well. This is the webcam on the Asus Republic of Gamer Zephyrus G14, and a little sample of the audio for you as well. And now, if you're curious about the exact pricing and availability, I can't remember if I mentioned it so far, but just head down in the description below, click those links. If you do make a purchase, of course, I'll get a small commission, but at no extra cost to you. That's what keeps this channel alive and the helpful content coming your way. All right, as we're looking at the keyboard deck, as you know, earlier in the video, we have the exact same trackpad, sound, feel exactly the same. The keyboards are actually identical as well. As you can see, I can fit this laptop right on top of the other, and it's the exact same keyboard. So you really don't have to worry about splitting hairs between the keyboard and trackpad. It really depends on if you want to get the thin and light, more ultrabook 2-in-1 laptop versus the G14 that has a slightly better ventilation with larger vents, a little bit thicker chassis, so it might run a little bit cooler. And then also you have upward facing speakers on the G14 where you do not have that on the X13. And also, before we move on, here's a sample of both keyboards and trackpads in use so you can hear the similarity between them. Okay, now battery life is something that I really expected to see a little bit better battery life out of the X13. However, they were so close. They were seriously so neck and neck. And you can see we have a 76 watt hour battery in the G14 versus a 75 watt hour battery in the X13. And you can see that the G14 wins out by just a little bit. Now there's two screen variations on the G14. You can get the mini LED screen, which comes on the RTX 4090 version, or you can get the standard IPS display. And you can see the two spec outs coming up on the screen. Now for the X13, you can also get two different screens. You get a certain screen with the Radeon integrated graphics, and then you get a specific screen with the a dedicated GPU, the RTX 4050 or 4070. So keep in mind, I'm gonna put both of those up on the screens as well, making my editor work hard today. You can see two versions and two versions that each of these laptops come with. Now, that doesn't affect the battery life too much because we have the exact same processor in each of the laptops. So the battery life is gonna win out barely with the G14, but honestly, I think we're really splitting hairs there. Either one is gonna be a great pick. Now, in regards to functionality, the upgrade path is definitely gonna be better on the G14. You're gonna be able to upgrade one of the RAM sticks on the G14, and you're actually gonna be able to upgrade 2 M.2 drives. So it's gonna come with an occupied M.2 slot and an unoccupied M.2 slot for the G14, whereas for the X13, you cannot upgrade the RAM, and you're only able to upgrade one drive. So there's only one M.2 drive in the X13. So as far as functionality and upgrade path, that is where I would lean in to the G14. Keep in mind, if you get the Radeon integrated graphics version of the X13, you're gonna be at 16 gigs of RAM. You have to go for the RTX 4070 version to get the 32 gigs of RAM on the X13. So that's where we start to kind of get a little bit, you gotta go full price for the X13 to get all the bells and whistles, whereas with the G14, you can kind of hit the mid-range, maybe the RTX 4070 or 4080, save a little money and still have a good upgrade path, still have some storage upgrade, and it just gives you a little bit more flexibility. This X13 is more of a like do and done kind of thing because it is a great laptop, but because it is thinner, it is a little bit lighter, it's gonna come with a little bit more specifics. Gotta say though, just looking off of the aesthetics, I love the look and feel. It has like this these actually have texture, these lines that go across the laptop, and I just love the feel of them. So overall, I really like the X13. I know I keep praising it, but there's still so much to love about the G14. Now, as we head into the benchmarks, you're gonna see the specs pop up on the benchmarks as it relates to the score. So remember that I have an RTX 4060 version of the G14 and an RTX 4090 version. I'm trying to get my hands on a 4070. I just haven't been able to yet. Big apologies there. And we have an RTX 4070 version of the X13. So that's what you're gonna see on the charts right now. Now, kicking it off in Geekbench, you can see that the X13 actually has a little bit better optimization for single core performance than the G14. And as we move into Geekbench multi-core performance, you can see the X13 is just slightly more optimized. Now, heading into Cinebench R23, basically the same story. These simulated benchmarks are really showing the X13 as kind of the better choice overall. But as we head into the real world benchmarks, which I believe are the best tell of a laptop, not these simulated benchmarks that everybody gets obsessed over, let's take a look at Photoshop. You can see that the Zephyrus G14 with the RTX 4090 is really stepping up, but closely behind is the X13. So this thing really packs a punch. It has 32 gigs of RAM, it has the same processor, and it has an RTX 4070. However, if you look at the G14 with the RTX 4060 and 16 gigs of RAM, definitely falls down the charts. Now, it's not a terrible laptop by any stretch of the imagination. It's still scoring a 923, which is a fantastic Photoshop score. But it is not matching up with those two higher end versions of each of the laptops. Now, keep in mind, both of the 4090 G14 and the X13 have 32 gigs of RAM, and the RTX 4060 version of the laptop has 16 gigs of RAM. And remember, that's the RAM that is soldered to the motherboard. So that open SODIMM RAM slot is empty. So it is running on one channel of RAM. I know there's been so much talk in the comment section of my videos because I apparently have confused a lot of people saying this is a single channel only. This is not single channel only. You have one soldered and you have one that can be removed. And so if you remove one RAM stick, you now are running on one RAM stick, okay? One, not two, but one, okay? That's what I'm saying when I say single channel. I'm saying it's running on one RAM stick, not two RAM sticks, not 8 gigs, making 16. It's 16 soldered. Okay, I hope that's clear. If it's not, good heavens, bless you. Going into After Effects, I was actually very surprised that we didn't see much better results out of the RTX 4090. You can see we score 1012 versus the X13 with the RTX 4070 scoring a 967. It's like only 50 points behind the RTX 4090. So this X13 really packs a punch. Now, if you get the RTX 4060 version, you're gonna score an 801 with that 16 gigs of RAM. Moving into Blender Classroom, definitely wanna choose that RTX 4090. Blender loves a powerful GPU, but shortly there behind is actually the RTX 4060 version of the G14, and then falling quite a bit behind, it's honestly almost 1,000 points less. It's 800 points less is the X13. So if you're a Blender user, RTX 4090 with a G14 is the way to go. All right, now moving into Autodesk 3ds Max, Autodesk Maya, and PTC Creo, you can see that the 4090 is of course the way to go. It is the big boy in the pack. But both Autodesk 3ds Max and Autodesk Maya, the X13 and the G14 are fairly close. As we move on to PTC Creo, they stick around close together. But then as we move on to SolidWorks, you can see that that 4090 is really pushing hard to give us a good score. Now, the interesting thing is last year's Asus Zephyrus G14 scored up there on the charts. As you can see, it actually scored a 163. Because it's a Radeon GPU, it's going to be able to do much better results with that RX 6700S in SolidWorks compared to an NVIDIA gaming GPU. You need a workstation GPU to get really powerful results from NVIDIA, but being this an RTX 4090, it still does decent. But I mean, for the laptop from last year being like $1,500 and sometimes on sale for under $1,000, scoring a 163. That's why there's some user scenarios that I say last year's model is really good. So I'm not going to jump into it again here. I already promised I wouldn't, and I did. Go watch those videos if you're curious about 2022 versus 2023 for G14. All right, now from a drop frame standpoint, I expected better out of the 4090. We still saw 137 drop frames out of the G14 with the RTX 4090. Now, I didn't know how to feel about that because if you look at the X13, we have 122 drop frames for BRAW and 1,500 for red footage. So we definitely got a better score out of red footage, but BRAW was pretty much neck and neck, which really surprised me. And then for the RTX 4060, it just did okay. Which again is why, I say it again, one more time, last year's G14 is something to look at, and I keep promoting that video because I think you should consider checking it out. All right, now moving on to 4K export time. That's a 9-minute clip put into Premiere Pro and then exported out at full quality 4K YouTube settings. You can see a 234 out of the 4090, a 237 out of the X13, and then a 309 out of the RTX 4060 of the G14. So really, in my opinion, you're super neck and neck with G14 versus X13. And if you want the compact, go for it. If you want the flexibility, the upgrade path, go for the G14. Okay, looking at 6K BRAW, that's a 6K clip, put it in Premiere Pro and export it out at full quality 6K settings. You can see we have 12 minutes and 27 seconds out of the RTX 4090. Fantastic score. And then we drop down to 19 minutes for the X13 and then 24 minutes for the G14 RTX 4060. So if you're looking for a fast 6K export time, fast 6K laptop, G14 4090 is going to be the way to go. X13 is going to be a good middle of the road at that 19-minute export time. I like to see like 17 minutes and 15 minutes to get like my stamp of like, yeah, this is a great 6K laptop. And it just didn't quite meet that criteria for the X13. DaVinci Resolve, we saw a good stair step once again with the RTX 4090 at top, 4070 in the middle, and 4060 on the bottom. Once I get a 4070 in, I will do a neck and neck comparison, but I know a lot of you have been asking for my thoughts between these two laptops, and so I just didn't want to continue to hold out. Wanted to get this video to you as soon as I could. If you're trying to decide between these two laptops, I think the X13 offers a ton of opportunity on a thin and light chassis with great battery life and a much more professional look. I am not a huge fan of gaming laptops because I'm not personally a gamer, though I have been a huge fan of this laptop in the past because it had such great performance at such a good price point. However, that price point has slowly faded and slipped away from us to be now a more expensive laptop. So for the 2022 version, I was still celebrating the affordability with great performance, but now you're at the mid 2,000 to even low 3,000 price point to get a laptop that's performing on par with last year's laptop. So I'm a little bit biased to lean towards the new X13 because the price did increase, but it still comes with so much features. It's so thin and light, and I just really like what they've done with it this year. Again, links in the description if you're ready to make a purchase, and click or tap the screen here for more videos about the G14 and X13. See you in the next one.